So good afternoon, Annika. Thanks so much for taking some time out and joining us on our Christmas week special of Business Owner Spotlight. Go ahead, introduce yourself and let us know what you do.
Thanks so much for having me. Lovely to be here on Christmas week too. It feels extra special. My name is Annika McGivern. I am a performance psychology coach. I am originally from Canada, but Ireland has been my home for 4 years now. And so I do base my business out of Ireland, although due to the pandemic, I've ended up with a range of clients actually kind of scattered all around the world. So that's really fun. And basically what I do is I help people to understand their own mind better in relation to performance. So every single one of us has something we want to be better at. And usually our mind is a huge part of whether or not we can be successful in that endeavor or whether we get stuck and held back. And so a huge chunk of my clients are athletes, but I do also work with, kind of a wider range of people, anyone who has a goal, something they're really striving towards, where they really need to get their mind or their brain on side in order to reach that goal.
Okay, and I suppose who would be your ideal client then? You mentioned athletes, and I'm assuming like business leaders. Or do you have an ideal person you would like to work with?
So typically the three main categories I work in are sports, so athletes and coaches, business, so say business leaders, and then also in the health and fitness world, so people who have big kind of health related goals, big changes they're looking to make in their life. And I would say the ideal client across all three of those areas is someone who's hungry to grow, and therefore really willing to do the work and take what they learn and implement it, and push through the discomfort that's always inevitably associated with that. I love working with that type of person because the growth that they can access for themselves is usually phenomenal if they're willing to really chase it and do the work and lean into that discomfort. So it's always exciting to work with someone like that.
And how does it work, Annika? Is it like practical exercises you give the people, or how do you actually deliver your service?
So it's a combination. So the first part would be that it's sort of through conversation. So if I have a one-to-one client, we would meet for a number of one-to-one sessions. And in those sessions, we would, there's a certain structure, there's certain models, if you will, that basically help everyone to understand their mind. But depending on the individual, we'll start in different places, we'll spend more time in one area or another. So it's a very collaborative approach in that one-to-one session where the person is really digging into and sharing about themselves and what's going on and what they feel the blocks are. And then I add my knowledge of psychology and different tools and frameworks and models to get understanding. And then once we have understanding, then we move into more practical exercises. Okay, so now that we understand what's happening, how do we actually create change? What does it look like to do something differently in my day-to-day life, to think differently, to behave differently? And that's where it gets really practical. There's some trial and error, and there's lots of learning that happens basically as you go out and do and practice.
Yeah, so it sounds really cool. Sounds fascinating. And you mentioned the pandemic. What sort of impact did the pandemic have on your business?
Well, interestingly enough, I actually started my business formally about 2 weeks before the pandemic started. So it was very formative in the way that my business took shape. I was lucky in that a lot of what I do can be done virtually. And so a lot of the impact basically was that all of my initial clients were virtual clients. The benefit of that was that I was able to reach really far and pick up clients around the world, in Australia, different parts of Europe, in Canada, in the States, in the UK. And so that was wonderful. I suppose the limitations of that are that, there's something special about being on the ground with someone, particularly if they are an athlete. There is something special about being able to go with them to a training session and really be there in the moment as they're applying those skills. So I think sometimes that can get lost in a virtual reality. But luckily, as we've transitioned out of the pandemic, I've been able to go back to more of a combination. And so I always strive now, wherever possible, to get some in-person time with the client. And we kind of do a blend of virtual and in-person. I suppose the other big impact would be that it really allowed me to move into a really cool area that I love now, which is partnering with personal trainers They all moved their businesses online during the pandemic, and there was a real need for people to have a bit of mindset support through that time. And so I got to partner with those personal trainers, come into their communities and sort of be that mindset support person, or that mindset coach, if you will, which was lovely because it allowed me to meet a lot of people virtually through the pandemic and be a part of people's experience as they navigated that whole challenging time.
Yeah, so there's actually been some benefit to start your business just in the middle of the pandemic. You were able to pivot and move with the, as you say, the virtual reality, and that's been a benefit, would you say, in the longer term?
I would say so. Yeah, it certainly wasn't, it didn't hinder things, I don't think. I mean, I suppose you never know how it would have been without the pandemic, but I can definitely say, looking back, that I'm very happy with the point it's brought me to today. And there's certainly been lots of good stuff that's come out of it. Yeah.
So, as you say, you're a couple of weeks into being a business owner and the world shut down. What was that like? What's been the biggest lesson you've learned from you started your business?
Honestly, the biggest lesson is that I really believe it literally all comes down to mindset, your own mindset as a business owner, and there's so many parallels that I can see between the mindset that's required to succeed in sport and the mindset that's required to succeed in business. And so maybe I was lucky because my background as an equestrian athlete is what led me into the world of sports psychology. And so I had a combination of experience applying that mindset as an athlete, and then also obviously the learning that I gained through studying to become a sports psychology coach. I think those things really stood me in good stead in those moments where we really had to kind of go, okay, everything's changing. What are we going to do? And so it requires, I think, being able to sort of pivot and go with the flow in those situations requires a lot of trust in yourself and a willingness to just keep taking action and just keep trying, whatever idea comes to mind, and just learning from what happens or what comes from that action, and sort of continuously moving forward. Our mind is incredibly interesting because I feel like there's almost always a part of you that's trying to stop that and hold you back, right? To not do the thing, to not push forward. And usually that's, comes from all sorts of different fears and insecurities, but it's so essential that you were able to override that part and keep going and keep taking action. So I think that really helped me in that moment. And I think that's a key thing that that comes up a lot with all my clients, whether the goal is sport related or business related. It all comes back to that mindset.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And what about how the future looks then for you and your business? What do you see as the future, and what do you think the main challenges moving forward are?
So I'd love to continue to get more in-person work happening. So that's sort of my big goal for 2023 is to keep increasing the ratio of in-person work. And as I'd say at the moment, it's still majority virtual with maybe 20 to 30% in person. So I'd like to increase that. It's not necessarily something I have to do, but it's something I want to do. I just really love being around people in person. And so I think that it adds a certain aspect to the work. So, but that of course brings its own challenges. It's a very different business model. So in one business model, obviously you're at home and basically all your clients are showing up on a screen. So there's very little logistics to figure out around that. If we're going back to the in-person, probably I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling around the country. And so there's just interesting challenges around that from a business perspective. We've got higher overheads. Obviously your time is now, there's not as much time. You've got to be factoring in a lot of planning. So that'll be interesting, to navigate that and see how that goes.
And do you think, just when you say that, is that something that, you enjoy more from, or do you think that's something you're going to be able to get better results with your clients by seeing them face to face?
I think that, so a lot of the sports that I've been working in through the pandemic are one-to-one, are individual sports. So things like equestrian and golf. I have been working with individuals within teams. So like individuals within JA teams, individuals within basketball teams, say. with the group work, what we do virtual is that it's a virtual workshop. And I think with the one-to-one work, there really isn't anything lost in that in the virtual setting. But I think, and I want to test this out now, I think that there's more to be gained maybe in the group setting with the team approach to having that in person.
Yeah.
Because in a group setting, there's always going to be a percentage of people who they're just not comfortable speaking up in that virtual environment.
Yeah.
And they're going to sit back, right? And so the wonderful thing about facilitating group work in person is that you can kind of read the room, you can have little small spin-off individual conversations with people. And so I think that there's something to really be gained from the group approach in person. And so, yeah, so I'm excited to kind of test that theory and see what happens with the results.
Yeah, it sounds cool. So obviously it hasn't been a standard journey with everything that's happened in the last few years. But I'm just wondering, if you were to start your business again, is there anything you would do differently?
I think I would, and I spoke earlier about having the mindset practice really helped me in those moments, but that's not to say that I didn't have many, many moments of self-doubt and fear along the way. I think, if I could go back and start over, I would try to trust even more in myself, and take more action and say yes to, or not necessarily say yes to more things, but to initiate more things and be, more confident in those early days. And so I suppose in a way like that translates to just really going for it, like really, really having the trust in yourself to just, just fly out there, and put yourself out there and share what you're doing with everybody. So I think I would probably, if I was redoing it, I'd bring even more trust and confidence to the table. What else? I think that really what I've learned along the way is that, and this isn't anything new, but it really comes, the networks and who you know and the relationships you build along the way are everything.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the biggest challenges of the pandemic was that your networks were obviously reduced, and it was really hard to build new networks. And so as a new business owner, I just moved down to Dublin as well, so I was in a new area. It was there was challenges with that around just networking, getting to know people and kind of getting into the space. And so I think that going back and doing it again, I would have put even more intentional effort into that, like really building the networks in whatever way possible, meeting as many people as possible, sharing what you're doing with as many people as possible, because those ripple effects are so powerful, and they're really what drive the growth of your business, I think.
Look, Annika, I think what you do is really cool, and I can totally see how it would benefit anybody. And I really appreciate you taking some time out to share that with us. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on.
And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.